The idea was if it was going to get hit with a 25% tariff, every single time that it crossed the border, you would famously have those examples of a car going from $50,000 to like $80,000 or $90,000, something like that. 1 month exclusion, though, as the question there was, like, that's not exactly time. This seems to be part of the chaos, blunt force strategy to try and see as much progress or announcements or whatever Trump can squeeze out of them. But the market reaction has been all over the place over the last couple of days. And so the pendulum continues to swing back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, is it crazy for him to think that he saw that Fox News segment with the car dealer guy who was like, this same truck is going up 20K like right now, instantly. Right. And Maria Bartiromo being like, oh my God, what is going on here? Like, I genuinely think that may have been part of the calculus going into this. I was a little bit surprised there wasn't more of a rollback of the tariffs that it's just applying to the auto industry. The other part that was kind of funny to me is like the one group that came out and was like, actually, we like the tariffs, was the United Auto Workers. And now that's the one industry where it's being rolled back. The other thing that was surprising to me is, you were alluding to the markets, is how positively the markets responded to this news. Since you are just talking about one sector of the economy, granted, of course, it is a significant sector, but you know, the plan is for them to go back in place in a month. All of the tariffs on Mexico are still there. The tariffs announced on China is still there. All of the rest of the tariffs on Canada is still there. And Justin Trudeau in Canada is still talking pretty tough, saying, listen, unless all of the tariffs are rolled back, we are continuing with our retaliatory tariffs. So, you know, people should be really clear about what this means. It will have significant impact on a lot of produce coming from Mexico. You know, from Canada, the tariff on energy is lower, but still there, still expecting significant gas price increases, including, I think in New England was the first place that you're likely to see gas prices go up some 20 to 40 cents pretty quickly here. New construction materials, a significant amount of that comes from Canada. And then depending on how long this lasts, 80% of the fertilizer that's used in the US comes from Canada as well. So even with the rollback of this one particular sector, which is, again, it's significant, you're still going to have quite significant and reverberating impacts across the economy if they continue to move forward with these.
Yeah, there's been some crazy movement on this. So you referenced the markets. The markets were up yesterday. The S&P erased its one-day loss. And yet, as of this morning, you and I are talking, the S&P futures have now erased yesterday's gains. So we're basically back to where we were 2 days ago. So don't ask me. I'm not some stock analyst. I can only go off of what the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times and all of them are saying. They're saying that right now the Dow future and all of that dropping is from a weakening dollar. And also they are saying that the indexes will reverse the rally of the partial rollback yesterday, also apparently in response to the German government and European bond market. So there's a lot going on right now. Actually, interestingly enough, almost all of it comes back to Trump, both on the German side and on the tariff side. The Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary, by the way, is the person who is most in charge of the tariffs. Their responsibility under the current law is that they're the ones who write those justifications for them, implement the tariffs specifically. Let's take a listen to what Secretary Lutnick had to say.
The big three say they produce cars that are compliant under USMCA, which means they have sufficient U.S. content in them to be part of the USMCA agreement. So I think that's part of our discussion, and the president's really thinking about that. It's not really an exemption. Remember, we're trying to end fentanyl coming into the country. So we're trying to send a message that fentanyl has got to end coming in from Mexico and Canada. It's just has to end. And they've done a reasonable job on the border, and they're going to do a better job on the border. But this is, remember, it's a key about fentanyl for this month. April 2nd, we could talk about the rest. Deaths in America have not decreased in a way that is sufficient. Deaths of fentanyl and opioids in America.
But yesterday, though, the president questioned the fairness of Canadian banks. So what is it about? Is it about Canada's banking system, or is it really about fentanyl?
So this month, right now, is about fentanyl. When we talk about April 2nd, we will talk about the bigger trade picture between our trading partners, Canada, and our trading partners in Mexico.
So just to reiterate here, they have to say fentanyl. because it's the only way they can get that national security exemption through law, because otherwise you can't just say, oh, I don't agree with Canadian banking or whatever because we have a USMCA agreement that's been ratified by Congress. This is the only way that you can actually get around that. We do, though, need to flag that the problem with all of this strategy is that Americans need to feel as if there's a big strategy behind it. And we flagged this in our pre-State of the Union coverage, but this is very important. Let's put this up there on the screen from the New York Times. Here is how Americans feel about tariffs. So you've got some 29% of Americans to 56% of Americans, depending on how the question is asked, who are in favor of tariffs. Now, the tariffs that have the highest support in the mid-50s are when you ask a question specifically about China. Now, if you mention Canada and Mexico, the support for the tariffs starts to fall. Now, the tariffs hover almost at a 50% approval rating if they're to bring back American jobs. But if you add the caveat of even if price increases, then you drop down to 30%. And that's not a surprise to me at all. Americans are some of the most cost-conscious people literally on earth. We're a 70% consumer-based economy. And the real thing is all of this would have to be communicated in a way as if people feel that there is a big strategy behind this. Because if you're going to jack the price of a car up or groceries or all of that, you need to have a reason. And look, I've spoken about Canada and Mexico. I do think our trade imbalances are ridiculous with those two countries. However, the problem is right now is that these people are, the American people, are not being sold a coherent vision on how this is all going to work. And that's evidenced by the constant roll in and roll back of the strategy, right? So the automaker is the perfect example, because out of all of the industries that most need and deserve tariffs, specifically from this Bring Back American Jobs, it's the automaker specifically, that one industry where it should be most applicable, and not say on groceries. We talked here about avocado. Berries is probably a better example. I don't think we grow any berries in the continental United States. But so if you're giving an exemption to one, jacking the price up on another, rolling back something here, and people are also saying it's about fentanyl, and people are just going to be like, okay, what the hell is this all about? And I think that's the biggest problem that the White House has right now.
Totally. I do think we grow some berries in California. I know we grow some strawberries there and some other things. Too. Yeah, but in any case, your point still stands. It's significant. Yeah. And, there's certain things, too, that, okay, we can grow them here in one particular season, but we're all used to getting everything we want all the time in the grocery store whenever we want it, even when it is the dead of winter. Those are the sorts of things, products that are really going to have pressure put on them here. At a time when people are particularly cost conscious. Obviously, inflation has been one of the major political stories of the past several years, towards the end of COVID and certainly post-COVID. So, that's what I've mentioned before is the economic landscape now and the economic priority of Americans is also different from when Trump first came into office. So I think even if he was telling a coherent story about what these tariffs could deliver in terms of reindustrializing America or, American jobs, and yes, we're going to have some pain in the short term, but in the long term, it's all going to work out. I think even if he was telling that story, it would be a tough sell. And he's not telling that story. The messaging is completely confused. Even Mexico and Canada don't really know what the hell he's doing or what the hell he wants. His advisor, just saw Peter Navarro go on last night and be like, Canada's being taken over by Mexican cartels. So they're really pushing the fentanyl line, even though we all know that that's just a pretext for him to be able to have as much authority as he wants and do whatever he wants. And I think your point about the auto industry is a really important one. Like, if you were going to make the case for these tariffs in any industry, the auto industry is the place where you have actually the most compelling case, where you could say, okay, we want to have a really strong auto industry here. This is important to our manufacturing base. It's certainly important in a number of key swing states. We're going to really invest in this industry. We're going to put some protective barriers around it. We're going to bring back, all these supply chains into the U.S. that have gone over to Canada and Mexico since NAFTA was instituted. But instead, that's the one that is getting the break. So, yeah, I think, politically, I think this is really a non-starter in terms of the way that it is. I mean, it's not being sold. And I don't think the policy makes sense anyway, outside of, there's some theories of some sort of grand plan to weaken the dollar and for that to cause the reindustrialization. But again, if that's your goal, you need to be explaining that to people. And at the same time, you see you're really flirting with disaster economically, which we're going to talk about more in the next block as well.
Yes, exactly. You really got to keep these things, you need to keep things such that